So I normally talk about technical stuff, that's granted, and this doesn't look very technical, but I find this one of the most interesting papers of the last few weeks, and I want to talk a little bit about GDPval, a paper that OpenAI has presented. I think it talks very clearly about how can we look at the impacts of AI in real work that actually change GDP, and second thing that we can take a look at here is how much the models are getting better and better compared to human experts. So GDPval, this fantastic study, is a study that OpenAI has spent a lot of, I would assume, time and resources to set up. They spend a lot of time finding the real tasks. This is very interesting thing to bear in mind, is because people like me probably spend a lot of time. We synthesize tasks and or talk with a couple of people, but they selected a few very important fields, and what they've done is they got these complex tasks, and some of these things require multiple files, so they work on multiple files. It's not just 1-2 files, right? And these are things that people do on their day-to-day jobs. Very important to emphasize that we're talking about single tasks, not multiple tasks. And what they're showing here is how does AI or frontier model compare to human capability. Things like audit pricing consistency in purchasing order for real estate agent. They design sales brochure for new DC property. And these are realistic tasks, right? Like, and again, focused on the different sectors of GDP growth parts of the US economy. A very interesting choice of area as well. You can see a couple of different things here, and if you go detail the data that they produced, they looked at government tasks, which is the most interesting one. In a sense, government is one of those places that it looks like frontier models are actually in parity currently. And they selected different places, and the results are very, very interesting. By the way, before we take a look at the results, I think this pairwise grading setup is very useful. Maybe there are ways to do that in enterprises as well. So basically, they have gold human deliverable. They selected that, and they got the model's output, and they asked a human expert to select which one looks better. Or in some cases, they are the same quality. There could be a win, there could be a tie, there could be a loss per entity in this game, right? They created an automated grader. They have this is mostly for scaling part, and they used a lot of humans to actually do that as well. So 50%, if you imagine, is parity, right? Like if I have a situation where people just randomly select one, the other one, so we are in a parity setup. Number one, of course, the most probably controversial thing, given that this is an OpenAI study, is that Anthropic's Claude Opus 4.1 is the closest that we have to human expert today. And they have put GPT-5 high as well, and O3 high, and all those kind of models. This doesn't necessarily negate what they're talking about when advanced data set, a PhD grade data sets. I don't think most of these tasks require a lot of complex reasoning capability, for example, or even instruction following. What these tasks require is capability of formatting, presentation, writing style, and I think in all these things, everybody knows that Anthropic is doing a better job today, right? Like there was no surprises there for many people that Anthropic would perform well. Then this is very interesting as well. It shows clearly how quickly these models are getting closer to human. And this is 2025, and you can imagine that maybe before end of this year we will get a situation which we have a parity, right? This one was kind of funny. I don't know, maybe I'm reading it wrong, but the way that it looks like that the cost improvement and the speed improvement, if you look at this is an unassisted expert. GPT-4o, which is not that much of an old model, wasn't really helping much. You could actually say that this was degrading the quality. So probably time that the expert was reviewing the output of 4o was negating whatever thing this was producing. And then you can see that 503, these are much better models, right? a lot of interesting things are happening here. They compare the it is very obvious that reasoning is not the only factor, right, for winning, which is very, I mean, we know that like the most clever employee is not always the best employee, right? Like, you don't, it's not the way that things work, which is true here. Very fantastic. The limitations through whatever they have written here. I think one other thing to bear in mind is this is mostly focused on single task kind of environment, right? Like none of these things rely heavily on communication with your colleagues and multi-agent kind of setup, as we're calling them today. Now, the interesting study, two things to bear in mind. First of all, I really think that parity with industry expert is out of the way. And then I guess if they were spending time fine-tuning these models for specific tasks, they probably would have been able to get 50% today. I'm more than sure about that, to be honest. I think this approach of pairwise grading is a very interesting way, an unbiased way of figuring out. This is a blind experiment as well, right? Bear in mind that this is a blind experiment. So the expert that chooses between the outcome of the GPT-5 and the outcome of the human had no idea of figuring out which one is which. Of course, there are some nuances here. I think maybe you could tell me, Mohsen, GPT-5 uses that M dash thingy, and I know it's GPT-5 or whatever. I hope they've done something about that. And then again, some models, they even name themselves as well. But it is as blind as an experiment that they could do. Very, very interesting, very influential report. And again, if you look at this, it tells you how vastly better models are today compared to just a few months back.